The massive ships appeared without warning above Earth's moon. They hung in space like floating cities made of crystal and light, each one the size of Manhattan. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the small blue planet below. His tall, thin frame swayed slightly as he studied the readings on his screen. "Another primitive world," he said to his second-in-command, Kethmore. "They have barely left their home planet. This should be simple." Veltar had done this hundreds of times before. His people, the Zephyrians, traveled the galaxy bringing peace to younger species. They offered advanced technology, long life, and protection from the dangers of space. In return, these species joined the Zephyrian Confederation and followed their guidance. It was a good system. It had worked for over 2,000 years. The first scans of Earth showed exactly what Veltar expected. The humans had nuclear weapons, basic computers, and small spacecraft that could barely reach their own moon. They fought wars among themselves and struggled with disease and hunger. They were perfect candidates for Zephyrian help. "Begin the peace protocols," Veltar ordered. "Send the universal greeting signals." The Zephyrian ships broadcast messages in mathematics and simple pictures. Within hours, Earth's governments responded. The humans seemed excited and frightened at the same time. They sent their own messages back, trying to communicate. Dr. Sarah Chen was chosen to lead Earth's response team. She was a linguist and diplomat, chosen because she could speak many languages and stay calm under pressure. When the Zephyrians invited human representatives to visit their ships, she volunteered to go first. The shuttle ride to the Zephyrian flagship was the most amazing experience of Sarah's life. The alien ship was beautiful beyond description. The walls seemed to be made of living light, and the corridors were filled with the soft sound of music that felt like wind chimes made of stars. Captain Veltar met her in a room that looked like a garden floating in space. The walls were transparent, showing the Earth spinning slowly below. The alien captain was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and large, kind eyes. When he spoke, his voice was translated by a device that made him sound gentle and wise. "Welcome, Dr. Chen," he said with a smile. "I am Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective. We come in peace, offering friendship to your people." Sarah tried to hide her amazement as Veltar showed her around the ship. The technology was incredible. The Zephyrians had machines that could heal any disease, create any food, and generate unlimited clean energy. They showed her recordings of other worlds they had helped, planets where war and suffering no longer existed. "Your people struggle with many problems," Veltar explained as they walked through a medical bay that looked like something from a dream. "We can solve these problems. We can give humanity everything it needs to be happy and safe." Sarah asked many questions. How did their technology work? What would humanity need to do in return? What happened to the cultures and traditions of the species they helped? Veltar answered patiently, but some of his answers made Sarah uncomfortable. The other species in the Confederation all seemed very similar now. They all followed Zephyrian laws, used Zephyrian technology, and lived according to Zephyrian values. Their old ways had been improved or corrected. "Change can be difficult," Veltar admitted when Sarah pressed him about this. "But all intelligent species eventually see the wisdom of our ways. Peace and prosperity are worth small sacrifices." As the tour continued, Sarah noticed something strange. The ship's sensors were constantly scanning Earth and the surrounding space. The scans went far beyond what would be needed for simple exploration. They were mapping every satellite, every military base, every ship in Earth's small fleet. When she asked about this, Veltar seemed surprised by the question. "We must understand your capabilities," he said. "This helps us determine what assistance you need most." But Sarah had the feeling he was looking for something else. The scans were too detailed, too focused on weapons and defenses. It felt more like someone studying an enemy than someone offering help. There was something else that puzzled the Zephyrians. Their sensors were picking up strange energy readings throughout the solar system. The readings didn't match any known human technology. When Veltar asked Sarah about them, she looked confused. "I don't know what those could be," she said. "Maybe interference from the sun? We have some research stations in the outer system, but nothing that should create readings like that." Veltar made a note in his log, but he wasn't too concerned. What could a species that had barely reached its own moon possibly hide from beings who controlled half the galaxy? The meeting ended with Veltar inviting Earth's leaders to send a full diplomatic team for formal negotiations. Sarah returned to Earth with recordings of everything she had seen and heard. The technology was amazing, but something about the Zephyrians bothered her. In the shuttle back to Earth, Sarah activated a small device hidden in her jacket. It had been recording everything during her visit, using technology that the Zephyrians shouldn't have been able to detect. The device was much more advanced than anything Earth was supposed to have. "Control, this is Chen," she said quietly into the device. "Package delivered. They're exactly what we expected. Beginning Phase 2. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar reviewed the day's events. The human representative had been intelligent and curious, asking the right questions. Soon, Earth's leaders would see the wisdom of joining the Confederation. They always did once they understood the alternatives. "Sir," Kethmore said, approaching with a datapad, "the energy readings from the outer system are getting stronger. Our long-range sensors are detecting what might be large construction projects." Veltar frowned. "Construction projects? Show me." The data showed massive structures in the dark spaces beyond the orbit of the planet the humans called Neptune. The power signatures were enormous, far beyond what a primitive species should be able to generate. "Could it be natural phenomena?" Veltar asked. "Possible, but unlikely," Kethmore replied. "The patterns are too regular, too purposeful." Veltar stared at the data for a long moment. In all his years of peaceful annexation, he had never encountered anything like this. But surely there was a reasonable explanation. The humans were clever for a young species, but they were still primitive. What could they possibly build that would concern the mighty Zephyrian fleet? He filed the report and went to his quarters to rest. Tomorrow, the real negotiations would begin. The formal negotiations began 3 days later. Earth's best diplomats, scientists, and leaders gathered aboard the Zephyrian flagship. The meeting room was magnificent, with walls that showed peaceful scenes from dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Captain Veltar sat at the head of a table that seemed to be made of solid starlight. Dr. Sarah Chen led the human delegation. She had studied the Zephyrian offer carefully, and what she found in the details made her stomach turn cold. But she kept her face calm and professional as Veltar began his presentation. "The Zephyrian advancement protocols have brought peace and prosperity to 437 worlds," Veltar said proudly. Holographic images appeared above the table, showing beautiful cities and happy people. "We offer the same gifts to humanity." The gifts seemed incredible at first glance. Clean energy that would never run out. Medical technology that could cure any disease and extend human life to 500 years. Faster than light travel. Food machines that could end hunger forever. Protection from hostile alien species. "The benefits are clear," Veltar continued. "In return, we ask only for cooperation and trust." But as Sarah read through the actual treaty documents, the true cost became obvious. Humanity would have to give up all military forces except for local police. All weapons capable of harming Zephyrian technology would be destroyed. Earth's governments would be replaced by a council that reported to Zephyrian advisors. Most disturbing of all, humans would no longer be allowed to develop their own technology. Every scientific project would need approval from Zephyrian overseers. Any research that might lead to advanced weapons or independent space travel was forbidden. "These terms seem rather restrictive," Sarah said carefully. "What happens to human autonomy? Our right to govern ourselves?" Veltar's smile was patient but condescending. "Young species often worry about such things," he said. "But autonomy without wisdom leads to suffering. Look at your world now. Wars, poverty, environmental destruction. These problems disappear when enlightened guidance is accepted." General Harrison, the head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. "You're asking us to completely disarm and trust you with our safety. What guarantees do we have? The guarantee of history, Veltar replied. No species under Zephyrian protection has ever been harmed by outside forces. Our fleet is vast and powerful. We have kept peace in this galaxy for over 2,000 years. Dr. Martinez, Earth's chief scientist, raised her hand. What about scientific freedom? Human curiosity drives us to explore and experiment. This treaty would end that. Veltar's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop slightly. Curiosity is admirable, but it must be guided. Uncontrolled experimentation leads to dangerous weapons and destructive technologies. We have seen species destroy themselves through reckless research. And what happens to species that refuse your generous offer? Sarah asked quietly. For the first time, Veltar's perfect composure cracked slightly. His large eyes became cold, and his voice lost its gentle tone. That would be regrettable. Fortunately, no species has ever been unreasonable enough to refuse our protection. The universe is a dangerous place for those who stand alone. The threat was clear, even though it was wrapped in polite words. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear, from anger. These creatures came offering gifts with one hand while holding a sword with the other. The negotiations continued for hours. The Zephyrians showed more recordings of their success stories. Every world looked the same. Clean, peaceful, prosperous, and utterly without any trace of the original culture that had once lived there. The people all wore similar clothes, lived in similar buildings, and had the same calm, empty expressions. They look happy, commented Dr. Roberts, one of the younger diplomats. They look drugged, General Harrison muttered under his breath. During a break, the human delegation gathered in a secure room. Sarah activated a small device that would prevent the Zephyrians from listening to their conversation. This isn't negotiation, General Harrison said angrily. This is surrender with fancy words. The technology they're offering is real, Dr. Martinez pointed out. It could solve most of humanity's problems. At the cost of everything that makes us human, Sarah replied. Look at those recordings again. Those people aren't humans or aliens anymore. They're pets. Well-fed, safe pets. She activated her secure communication device and sent a coded message to Earth. Need more time. Continue preparations. The response came back quickly in the same code. Understood. Phase 2 proceeding on schedule. When negotiations resumed, Sarah tried a different approach. Perhaps we could arrange a gradual transition, allow humanity to maintain some independence while slowly adopting your systems. Veltar shook his head firmly. Experience has taught us that partial measures lead to conflict. Complete integration is the only path to lasting peace. What about cultural preservation? Dr. Roberts asked. Could some human traditions and customs be maintained? Harmful customs must be abandoned, Veltar replied. Beneficial ones may be preserved if they do not conflict with Confederation standards. Sarah wondered who would decide which customs were harmful and which were beneficial. She had a feeling she already knew the answer. As the day wore on, the Zephyrians grew increasingly impatient with human questions and requests for modifications. Veltar's advisor, a thin creature named Seklon, whispered frequently in the captain's ear. Their expressions grew darker with each whispered conversation. Finally, Veltar stood up abruptly. Perhaps humans need a demonstration of what refusal means, he said coldly. Tomorrow, we will show you the fate of species that choose to stand alone against the dangers of space. The human delegation was escorted back to their shuttle. As they prepared to return to Earth, Sarah noticed that Zephyrian ships were taking new positions around the planet. It wasn't quite a blockade yet, but it was close. During the flight back to Earth, Dr. Martinez looked out the window at the alien ships. Do you think we're making the right choice? She asked quietly. Sarah followed her gaze to the beautiful, deadly vessels surrounding their world. The right choice isn't always the easy choice, she said. But sometimes the hardest choice is the only one that lets you stay human. Back on Earth, encrypted communications flowed between military bases and research facilities around the world. In the deep space monitoring stations, technicians watched their screens carefully. The mysterious energy signatures in the outer solar system were growing stronger. On the Zephyrian flagship, Captain Veltar reviewed intelligence reports about other primitive worlds his fleet had been negotiating with. 3 species in distant systems had suddenly disappeared from contact. Their worlds were empty, their ships gone, with no explanation. For the first time in his long career, Veltar felt a twinge of uncertainty. But surely these humans, trapped in their single star system with their primitive technology, could not pose any real threat to the mighty Zephyrian fleet. Tomorrow's demonstration would convince them to see reason. It always did. Captain Veltar woke early the next morning, determined to end the humans' stubborn resistance. In all his centuries of bringing species into the Confederation, he had never encountered such persistent questioning of obviously beneficial terms. Today's demonstration would show these humans exactly what happened to species that refused Zephyrian protection. The human delegation returned to the flagship at the appointed time. Dr. Sarah Chen noticed that more Zephyrian ships had moved into position around Earth during the night. The formation looked less like a diplomatic fleet and more like an invasion force. Today we will demonstrate the realities of galactic survival, Veltar announced to the assembled humans. His voice had lost all warmth from the previous days. Observe. The meeting room's walls became transparent, showing space around them. Veltar gestured and several large asteroids appeared on the display, each one bigger than a city. They hung motionless in the void, dark and ancient. These asteroids represent the fate of unprotected worlds. Veltar said coldly, "Watch what happens to those who stand alone against the dangers of space." 3 Zephyrian ships moved into position around the asteroids. Their weapons were beautiful and terrible, crackling with energy that seemed to bend space itself. When they fired, the asteroids simply vanished. Not destroyed or broken apart, but completely erased from existence. The human delegation watched, in silence. Some looked impressed, others frightened. But Sarah Chen was studying the weapons carefully, her scientific mind analyzing everything she saw. "Impressive," she said calmly when the demonstration ended. "Could we get detailed scans of the destroyed matter? For scientific research, of course." Veltar was pleased by her request. It showed proper respect for Zephyrian power. "Of course. Our sensors recorded everything. The detailed scans were transmitted to the human shuttle immediately." Sarah thanked Veltar politely, but inside she was smiling. Every scan, every demonstration, every casual display of technology was giving human scientists exactly what they needed. During the break, Sarah sent another coded message to Earth. "Package 2 delivered. Analysis proceeding." But Veltar was growing increasingly frustrated with other problems. The mysterious energy readings from the outer solar system were getting stronger every day. His science officer, Kethmore, approached him with a worried expression. "Captain, the readings from the outer system are now showing massive construction activity," Kethmore reported. "The power signatures suggest projects far beyond what these humans should be capable of building." Veltar studied the data on his private screen. The readings showed enormous structures being built in the dark spaces beyond Neptune. The energy patterns were unlike anything in Zephyrian databases. What could they be building out there? Veltar wondered aloud. "The humans claim they are research stations and solar collection arrays," Kethmore replied. "But the power outputs are enormous. Some of these structures are generating more energy than entire Zephyrian cities. Could it be natural phenomena? Unknown physics?" Kethmore shook his head. "The patterns are too regular, too purposeful. Someone is building something massive out there." Veltar made a decision. "Send long-range scouts to investigate. I want to know what the humans are hiding." But when the scout ships approached the outer system, they encountered something impossible. Their sensors showed nothing, empty space. Yet the energy readings from the flagship indicated massive structures exactly where the scouts reported emptiness. "Sir," the scout captain reported, "we see nothing here. Just normal space and a few small research platforms." Veltar stared at his screens in confusion. How could his sensors detect enormous construction projects that his scout ships couldn't see? Unless Captain, Kethmore said quietly, I'm receiving a priority message from High Command. The message that arrived changed everything. 3 other primitive species that Zephyrian fleets had been negotiating with in distant star systems had vanished. Not destroyed, not evacuated, but simply gone. Their worlds were empty, their ships missing, their populations nowhere to be found. How is this possible? Veltar demanded. These were primitive species. They had no interstellar travel capabilities. The message from High Command was brief and troubling. Investigation ongoing. Maintain current mission but report any unusual activities immediately. Veltar turned back to the negotiations with a growing sense of unease. The humans were still asking questions, still requesting modifications to the standard treaty. But now their questions seemed different, more focused, more knowing. Captain Veltar, Dr. Chen said during the afternoon session, we're curious about your ship's defensive systems. How do you protect against stealth attacks? The question seemed innocent enough, but something about the way she asked it made Veltar uncomfortable. Our shields are impenetrable, he replied. No known weapon can harm a Zephyrian vessel. What about unknown weapons? General Harrison asked casually. Before Veltar could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Kethmore rushed to his station, his face pale with shock. Captain, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. The readings we've been tracking, they're all powering up simultaneously. On the main display, space around Earth began to change. What had appeared to be empty void suddenly blazed with energy signatures. Dozens of structures that hadn't been visible before were now showing on sensors. What is this? Veltar demanded, turning to the human delegation. Dr. Chen stood slowly, her diplomatic mask finally slipping away. For the first time since negotiations began, she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. This, she said quietly, is what happens when predators stop pretending to be prey. The structures powering up around Earth were not research stations or solar collectors. They were weapons platforms, each one larger than a Zephyrian ship and bristling with technology that shouldn't exist. Massive installations that had been hidden from view by some kind of stealth system. But that wasn't the most shocking revelation. As the stealth fields dropped, Veltar could see ships. Hundreds of them. Ships that were clearly not human in design, belonging to species he recognized as long dead or absorbed into the Confederation. Impossible, he whispered. Those species were integrated centuries ago. Dr. Chen heard him. Integrated? Is that what you call genocide? Enslaving entire worlds and calling it peace? Veltar's mind reeled. How could these extinct species have ships? How could the humans have hidden such massive constructions? How could primitive Earth technology create stealth fields that fooled Zephyrian sensors? You're wondering how we did it, Dr. Chen said, reading his expression. The answer is simple. We've been expecting you for a very long time. She activated a device on her wrist, and suddenly Veltar could hear voices speaking in languages he recognized. Languages of species that the Zephyrians had peacefully annexed decades or centuries ago. You see, Captain, Dr. Chen continued, when you've enslaved 400 worlds, eventually someone notices the pattern. Someone starts to fight back. Someone starts to save the others. The truth hit Veltar like a physical blow. The missing species hadn't vanished. They had been rescued, hidden, protected by someone with technology advanced enough to fool Zephyrian sensors and ships powerful enough to evacuate entire populations. Who are you? He whispered. Dr. Chen's smile grew wider and more dangerous. We're exactly who we said we are, Captain. We're humans. We're just not the humans you thought we were. The revelation hit Captain Veltar like a cold wave. Around his flagship, space was filled with ships and weapons that shouldn't exist. The primitive humans he had come to help were surrounded by technology that made even Zephyrian vessels look outdated. This is impossible, he said, staring at the displays. Our intelligence reports showed your species had barely left your home planet. Dr. Sarah Chen laughed, and for the first time since negotiations began, the sound was genuinely amused rather than diplomatic. Your intelligence was seeing exactly what we wanted you to see, Captain. We've been studying your methods for a very long time. She walked to the wall display and gestured. The image changed to show a detailed schematic of the Zephyrian flagship. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure was mapped out in perfect detail. You've been scanning us for weeks, Chen continued. But we've been scanning you too. Every time you demonstrated your technology, every casual display of power, every threatening gesture gave us more data to work with. Veltar's second-in-command, Kethamor, was frantically working at his station. Captain, our long-range communications are being jammed. We cannot contact the fleet or high command. How? Veltar demanded, turning back to Chen. How could a primitive species develop such advanced technology? Chen's expression grew cold. We're not primitive, Captain. We've been spacefaring for much longer than you realized. Those little ships you detected around Earth, they were decoys, bait to make you underestimate us. She activated another device, and the wall display showed the solar system as the Zephyrians had never seen it. Hidden bases on asteroids, massive, shipyards in the outer darkness, fortress installations that had been invisible to every scan. The entire system was a trap, and the Zephyrian fleet had walked right into it. The energy readings you detected weren't research stations, Chen explained. They were weapons platforms, ship construction facilities, and defense networks that we've been building for decades. We saw you coming long before you arrived. General Harrison stood up from his seat. Like Chen, his diplomatic mask had fallen away, revealing something much more dangerous underneath. We know about your peaceful annexations, Captain. We know about the 437 worlds you've enslaved. We know about the cultures you've destroyed and the people you've turned into mindless drones. Veltar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. How could you possibly know about our operations? They are classified at the highest levels, because we've met your kind before, Chen said simply. 3 of your fleets, actually. They were very educational before we took them apart. The captain's legs almost gave out. The missing fleets? That was you? The first one we encountered was about 30 years ago, General Harrison explained. They tried the same routine you're using now. Showed up with pretty ships and offers of peace, then made threats when we asked too many questions. We had to learn quickly how to fight beings with technology centuries ahead of ours. Chen nodded. It took us years to figure out how to defeat them. But humans are very good at learning from our enemies. We studied their ships, reverse-engineered their technology, and prepared for the next visit. The second fleet was easier, Harrison continued. We knew their tactics, their weaknesses. The third fleet barely lasted a day. Veltar stared at them in horror. You destroyed 3 Zephyrian fleets? That's impossible. No primitive species has that capability. There's that word again, Chen said with annoyance. Primitive. You keep using it, but I don't think you understand what it means. A primitive species doesn't build interstellar rescue networks. A primitive species doesn't evacuate entire populations from your confederation and relocate them to hidden worlds. The truth was becoming clear to Veltar, and it was worse than his darkest fears. The missing species. You rescued them. Rescued, relocated, and recruited, Harrison confirmed. Amazing how grateful people are when you save them from slavery. Amazing how eager they are to help save others. Chen walked to another wall panel and activated it. The display showed dozens of star systems, each one marked with symbols that Veltar recognized. They were worlds that the Zephyrians had classified as successfully integrated decades or centuries ago. We've been busy, Captain, Chen said. Every time your people sent a peaceful annexation fleet somewhere, we sent a rescue fleet. Every time you conquered a world, we offered the survivors a choice, hide and heal, or fight back and help others. Most chose to fight, Harrison added with grim satisfaction. The displays around the room lit up with images of ships, bases, and armies. Veltar saw species he recognized, people his civilization had conquered and supposedly pacified generations ago. They were all here, all armed, all waiting. This is why our scans detected so many different technologies, Kethmore whispered. These aren't just human ships, this is an alliance. The largest alliance in galactic history, Chen confirmed, united by one simple goal, stopping the Zephyrian Confederation from enslaving any more worlds. Veltar tried to maintain his composure. You cannot possibly believe you can defeat the entire Confederation. We have millions of ships, thousands of worlds. We don't need to defeat all of you at once, Harrison replied. We just need to free your slaves one world at a time, starting with the heart of your empire. Chen activated a final display, and Veltar's blood turned to ice. It showed the Zephyrian home system mapped out in perfect detail. Every defensive station, every fleet position, every critical facility was marked and analyzed. How? He gasped. Information warfare, Chen explained. When you capture Zephyrian ships, you get access to their databases. When you rescue Zephyrian slaves, some of them remember important details about their home worlds. When you do this, for 30 years you learn a lot. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of alarms throughout the ship. Veltar realized that everything his people believed about themselves was wrong. They weren't the enlightened peacekeepers of the galaxy. They were parasites, and humanity was the immune system that had finally evolved to fight them. What do you want? He asked quietly. Complete surrender of your fleet, Chen replied immediately. Full access to your databases and communication networks. Safe passage for our rescue ships to every world in your confederation. And if I refuse? Harrison's smile was cold as space. Then you'll find out why humans spent millions of years as apex predators before we learned to be civilized. On the displays around them, more ships were decloaking. Massive vessels that dwarfed even the Zephyrian flagship, bristling with weapons that no Confederation scientist had ever imagined. The trap was complete, and Veltar finally understood what he was truly facing. Humanity hadn't been hiding because they were weak. They had been hiding because they were strong, and they wanted their enemies to underestimate them. Now the mask was off, and the galaxy was about to discover what humans really were when they stopped pretending to be anything else. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, and Captain Veltar was witnessing its final moments. Captain Veltar stared at the displays surrounding him, watching his perfect world collapse in real time. The trap was complete, and there was no escape. But the final shock was yet to come. Captain, Kethmore called out from his station, his voice shaking. There's something declaking directly behind us. It's massive. The rear display activated, showing space behind the Zephyrian flagship. At first, there was nothing but stars. Then reality seemed to bend and twist, and something impossible appeared. The ship that materialized was a monster. It dwarfed the Zephyrian flagship like a whale next to a minnow. Dark metal covered in weapons that hummed with barely contained power. Along its hull, letters spelled out its name in human script. Tess Retribution. Terran Earthship Retribution, Dr. Chen said, reading Veltar's expression. Our flagship. One of 50 we've built over the past 30 years. The bridge of the Retribution appeared on the main display. A woman in a crisp military uniform sat in the captain's chair, her eyes cold and determined. She looked exactly like Dr. Chen, but older and harder. Hello, little brother, the woman said, and Chen smiled. Admiral Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen replied. Permission to come aboard? Permission granted. Bring our guests. Veltar felt the blood drain from his face. Your sisters? Twins, actually, Chen replied. I handle the talking. She handles the shooting. It's worked out well for us. Within minutes, the entire human delegation was transported to the Retribution. Veltar and his senior officers were brought along as prisoners, though they were treated with cold politeness. The Zephyrian flagship was taken intact, its crew disarmed but unharmed. The bridge of the Retribution was a temple to human warfare. Every surface was covered with tactical displays, weapon controls, and communication systems. Crew members from dozens of different species worked side by side, all wearing the same human military uniforms. Admiral Sarah Chen rose from her command chair as they entered. She was taller than her sister, with scars on her hands and a bearing that spoke of years of combat command. Captain Veltar, she said formally. Welcome aboard the first ship of the Terran Liberation Fleet. Veltar tried to maintain his dignity. I demand to speak with my superiors. This is an act of war against the Zephyrian Confederation. No, Admiral Chen replied calmly. This is the end of the Zephyrian Confederation. She gestured to the displays around the bridge. Each one showed a different star system, and in each system, human ships were emerging from stealth. The Liberation Fleet was massive, spread across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Operation Freedom Dawn began 1 hour ago, the Admiral explained. Right now, Liberation fleets are arriving at every major Confederation world. We're not here to conquer. We're here to free the people you've enslaved. Dr. Chen joined her sister at the central display. We've been planning this for 30 years, Captain. Every rescued species provided intelligence about Confederation worlds. Every captured ship gave us access codes and navigation data. Every freed slave told us where their families were taken. The displays showed the liberation in real time. On world after world, human ships were arriving at orbital stations and defense platforms. But instead of attacking, they were broadcasting. Admiral Chen activated the main communication system. Her voice, translated into hundreds of languages, echoed across space to every world in the Confederation. People of the galaxy, she began. For too long you have lived under the lie of Zephyrian peace. You have been told that slavery is protection, that freedom is dangerous, that resistance is futile. Today we prove them wrong. The broadcast showed images from the rescued worlds, people who had been saved from Confederation control, living free on hidden planets, children who had grown up without Zephyrian mind control drugs, cultures that had been preserved and allowed to flourish. We are the Terran Liberation Alliance, Admiral Chen continued. We offer you a choice your Zephyrian masters never did. You can come with us to freedom, or you can stay and fight for it here. But you will never again be slaves. On the displays, Veltar watched his empire crumble. World after world, the response was the same. People who had lived under Confederation rule for generations suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. They rose up, throwing off the mental chains that had kept them docile for so long. The Zephyrian response fleets were overwhelmed. Ships that had never faced real opposition found themselves fighting enemies who knew their every weakness. Liberation fleet vessels that had been built specifically to counter Confederation technology made short work of the confused and demoralized Zephyrian forces. How? Veltar whispered. How did you hide all of this? Humans are very good at two things, Dr. Chen replied. Learning from our mistakes and planning for the long term. The first Confederation fleet that attacked Earth taught us that we needed to become something you'd never faced before. What's that? Veltar asked, though he was beginning to understand the answer. A predator that thinks like prey, Admiral Chen answered. For 30 years we studied you. We learned your tactics, your weaknesses, your blind spots. We became everything you never expected to face. Patient, coordinated, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. The liberation continued across the galaxy. On some worlds, the transition was peaceful. Zephyrian administrators simply surrendered when faced with overwhelming force and popular uprising. On others, there was fighting, but it was brief and one-sided. The most shocking revelation came when the liberation fleets reached the Confederation's core worlds. These supposedly loyal populations rose up with as much enthusiasm as the conquered ones. Even the Zephyrians' own people were tired of their empire's endless appetite for control. Your own citizens are rebelling, Dr. Chen pointed out, showing Veltar the reports from his home system. Amazing what happens when people realize they have a choice. Within hours, it was over. The Zephyrian Confederation, which had ruled half the galaxy for over 2,000 years, simply collapsed. Their fleets surrendered, their worlds declared independence, and their leaders fled or were captured. Veltar sat in a comfortable chair on the Retribution's bridge, watching his life's work disappear. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now, we rebuild, Admiral Chen replied. Every species gets to choose their own government, their own culture, their own future. Some will want our help, others will want to be left alone. Both choices will be respected. And the Zephyrian people? They'll be treated exactly like everyone else, Dr. Chen said. Free to build whatever kind of society they want, as long as it doesn't involve enslaving others. Veltar looked around the bridge at the mixed crew of humans and former Confederation slaves working together. Why didn't you just destroy us? You clearly had the power. Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. Because that would make us just like you. The point isn't to replace one empire with another, the point is to make sure there are no more empires. She turned to face Veltar directly. Besides, destruction is easy. Building something better is hard. Humans prefer to do things the hard way. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed more rapidly than it had in millennia. Worlds that had been uniform and controlled under Confederation rule exploded with diversity and creativity. Art, music, science, and culture flourished as people rediscovered their heritage. The Terran Liberation Alliance kept its word. They provided help to worlds that requested it, and left alone those that preferred independence. The vast human fleet that had appeared so suddenly began to scatter, its ships returning to hidden bases or transforming into exploration and aid vessels. Veltar was eventually released and returned to his home world, where he lived quietly for the rest of his long life. Sometimes late at night he would look up at the stars and remember the moment when he realized that the galaxy's greatest predators had been pretending to be prey. Humanity had awakened, and the universe would never be the same. In the deep reaches of space, human exploration ships pushed into unknown regions, carrying with them a simple message for any civilizations they might encounter. We come in peace, but we are not defenseless. We offer friendship to those who want it, and protection to those who need it. But we will never again allow anyone to mistake kindness for weakness. The age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun.